Live from the ValdostaHomeSales.com studios, it is The Running Theory with Rick and Rob. Oh, thank you.
Well,
we are back at it
all
again
right.
today.
Hey, Rob.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. How
Hey.
about what are you up to?
Well, I have learned that I need to speak directly into the microphone, but I don't want to sound like I'm trying too hard. Am I trying too hard?
Well, if you get really close to the mic, you get that AM radio or the FM
That's right.
radio voice
Yeah.
live from the ValdostaHomeSales.com studios.
Yeah.
People make fun of me for that, but I think it sounds good.
Yeah, I think I was. But it sounds great. You sound great. I think I was sitting too far back, so I'm just going to concentrate on that without being ridiculous.
As long as we talk into the mic and everybody can hear us.
That's right.
We have a guest today who has a very loud voice.
Yeah. I'm glad to have him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
We finally got him. We wrangled him in.
Before we let people know who that is, we had Steve Plowman on last week, and he was a great guest.
He was good, man.
70 years old, still trucking,
Yeah.
and still outrunning me by miles.
He looks
miles
great.
and miles.
I mean, the guy looks great. I mean, he's very fit. Still at it, like you say.
And he's done so much more than even I thought he had done before. Qualifying for the Ironman Championships 5 times. Yeah, I think that's what he said.
Yeah,
and
I think
then
you're right.
with the Boston Marathon, multiple times with that.
Winning multiple races.
And so that's just amazing. He comes from the old school, and he's kind of, because he's been running since the 70s, and he's still running today in the 2020s. And so a lot of people, get to know him, and he's that bridge from the old school Valdosta when they used to run 10Ks, and they were, used to fly into the new Valdosta to the new,
That's right.
what running is today.
Plus, he's been an inspiration to a lot of people. And he still runs with a lot of us young folks. Not necessarily us, but, we see him out running with folks.
Yeah, definitely. So it was great. And what else has been going on? Did you run any this week?
Run? I ran. We actually ran together.
Yeah, we ran together Sunday, and it was hot. It was
hot.
It was murder out there.
How'd it go?
I made it.
We made it.
Hey, you know what? If we get up and we get out there, then we're doing something. Right now, I'm just trying to lay down a base. I'm trying to lose weight. You don't need to lose any weight, but
I need to gain some weight.
Yeah, you need to gain some weight. You can have some of what I got.
Well, we'll work it out in there somewhere. Hey, it's one of those days. We ran 6, but I should have ran 8. I mean.
Yeah.
But
it was hot.
I wasn't saying that yesterday, but
yeah,
now I look back on it.
But I ran 6 days this week. I averaged a little over 3.5 miles a day. So right now it's just trying to get up there and do what I can do. And
you running this evening?
No, I ran this morning.
I might try to run later. Yeah,
I might. I ran 1 mile warm up, and then about 4 quarter-mile, I'm going to call them up tempos.
Yeah.
Not fast, but and then made my way home. So it ended up being a little bit less than 4 miles, but it was fun.
We were talking about some of the guests we have coming on, just a preview. We've got, in the future weeks, we've got Mike Beeman coming on from Tifton. Got Jerry Bourne from Eccles County coming on. The Mazurkowitzes are coming on. Charlie Mizell. Got a nice slate of guests coming on. And Weight to Lose. We've got Crystal and her folks from Weight to Lose coming on. So we got a busy schedule.
Yes, and if you have any more guests, anybody else out there who's interested in coming on, we're lining them up right now. And you mentioned Martha Mazurkowitz, I hear that she's putting on a 5K road race, first one that I've seen in a couple months. It's going to be virtual, but maybe she can incorporate some kind of local, aspect into that race. I think she's still looking at it, but any kind of race, it benefits Lowndes County cross country team, so that'll be good.
It'll be interesting to see what the participation is, but let's encourage that. Everybody get out and do that race.
Get out, because it is still a local school, local team. So even if it's not locally put on as in a traditional style race, it'd be great if people could go out there and run it.
Sounds good.
But are you ready to wave in our
Let's
guest?
do it. Let's bring him on.
Mr. Smoot, Mr. Coach, head coach Todd Smoot.
Where's all that applaud you had last week?
I missed the applause. I missed the applause.
Welcome anyway, Todd.
Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
It's always a pleasure.
Are you sure? Is it as much a pleasure when you're coaching me to run? You've coached me several times in the past.
Well, certainly.
and I've always been the best. Student, coach, player. I don't know what you call it.
I look at you as an athlete.
Oh, well, thank you.
You know, he kind of took me in. God, it's probably been 10 years ago now. Remember Frank Ryan?
Sure.
Yeah, Frank Ryan.
Frank
kind of ran in between Tiffin and Valdosta.
Always.
And he invited me to come run with you guys, and I didn't really know you back then. I didn't know Ryan at all or any of those guys, and he invited me to come over and run, and Todd was good enough to let me join the gang.
Anybody that wanted to run. Our approach was we wanted everybody to be active.
Yeah.
As you were introducing earlier, running, being a part of it, getting out there, doing something, be active.
Definitely.
Particularly as we get older, like Steve Plymel. Stay active. If you're staying active, then you have a better opportunity in remaining healthy.
I think I lifted your line a couple of weeks ago. I said something about be active or whatever. I thought, yes, that's Todd's line. That's his thing. But, yeah, it's good. It's good for everybody.
Tell us about what you do, where you're from, who you are.
Oh, my goodness. Well.
Tell me about your running career. How you started running. When was the first time you picked up a pair of running shoes and got active?
My first pair of running shoes were tree-torn tennis shoes.
Never heard of them.
The older folks will know that.
Can we still get a pair?
No. Actually, yes, you can. They were canvas, tree-torn, and they were truly tennis shoes because my mother doesn't like this part, but she thought running shoes were the ugliest things in the world, and she would never buy me a pair of running shoes. And I was probably somewhere around 12 years old. And I had
like the old Converse, Chuck Taylors or anything?
No, the tree-torn tennis shoes were they were white, canvas, and they could be washed in the laundry room. And by doing so, then they could be kept clean, and I could wear them like I was supposed to wear them, at least the way my mother looked at
with
it.
Your Sunday clothes.
And so I started off with those and enjoyed wearing those for a number of years until I saved up enough money to buy my first pair of running shoes, which was just before my freshman year in high school. And I got on the cross-country team there. But prior to that, wearing tree-torn tennis shoes, then the fun part occurred. Actually, within the second week of me being at the high school, my shoes were stolen from me. Literally. And I had spent all that time raising all that money.
You weren't fast enough to run away?
Hey, how much money was it?
Those were, and here's the funny part, they were Adidas Countries, and they were leather shoes, and they would be considered now Kmart specials. And they were the bomb. They were great.
That was premium. That was premium back in the day.
That was unbelievable how good they felt compared to tree-torn tennis shoes. So they were taken from me, and my mother, for some reason, felt sorry for me. So she went out with me and now bought a pair of Nike Waffle trainers. So I got during my freshman year in high school, and these were the shoes that helped build that running boom. And wore those, and our toenails went through the nylon very easily every time, and we got terrible blisters. And it was a great shoe. And then it's gone from there. But somewhere 72 Olympics had a great empowering a lot of people. They saw the 1972 Olympics, and that's when the first running boom really hit. and which somewhat coincided with my father, who was about to get to that age where you try and rekindle your youth, and he decided he was going to go run. And somewhat like the commercial, like father, like son, the commercial, it was an anti-smoking commercial. And that was pretty much us. In fact, I actually smoked a cigarette at the dinner table before 1969, which apparently was the end of my parents smoking. I asked, well, can I have a puff? And they apparently looked at each other, and my father threw his cigarettes away, and my mother used lifesavers to dwindle her thing, and I didn't help at all because I caused her to smoke a lot, and so I gave her reasons to have it, and I always helped her trying to cut down on it, and so I had a lot of lifesavers at that time.
Ultimately, you did. I
mean, but so he started running. I ran with him. He got tired of watching me run around the track, sat down, had me watching me continue to run around North Springs High School's track, which at the time was a pavement. And he said, I'm going home. Are you coming with me? And I was like a little puppy dog and just started liking it. I enjoyed it. Was something that came very easy for me. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed it, so I continued to do it. I looked for any opportunity I could to compete, which there were not that many opportunities in the early 70s, and especially for someone young. And so anything in middle school or high school, anything or elementary school or middle school that I could compete in, I competed in. I loved it. And went from there, went to high school, got trounced my first race, and I was hooked.
And you were considered, I guess you were considered fast back in those days.
Not my first race.
but as you came along.
Very quickly, by the second race, I understood a lot of what was supposed to happen.
Is cross country?
This is cross country in the fall of my fall of my freshman year in 1976. Mm-hmm. I think it was, 76. So that was my introduction into competing at a relatively high rate. Level, and our high school was pretty well known for having good runners, but it was also the first year that the state of Georgia went. Prior to that, the farthest that cross country was a 2.2 mile run. Mm-hmm. And the year that I started, they bumped it up to what they said was 3 miles, ended up being 5K, but they said it was 3 miles for the next 4 years, and we thought we were running 3 miles when we were actually running 3.1. But we had a good time with it and ran everywhere, and it's been a wonderful sport for me. That and without a question, I become addicted to things. Mm-hmm. And if I had not found this sport, I fear where I would have ended up, and most likely nowhere good. So. I'm really happy about what this sport has done for me. It goes back to that Saturday Night Live skit. Baseball been very, very good to me. Well, running has been very, very good to me. Running has.
And so after high school, you went to college.
I went on to college, and I had a desire to compete, continue to go to the next level. Coming out of the state of Georgia, when all of our race results were indicating that we were running 3 miles, I wasn't considered very good. Mm-hmm. But I also was able to get and compete and make the team my freshman year with a team that did pretty well in the ACCs, the Atlantic Coast Conference, and at regionals. As a freshman, I was able to make the team, make the top 7, and I always did. All 4 years, I made the top 7 as what would be classified as a walk-on. I did not earn any kind of athletic aid, any kind of aid whatsoever from the school for my athletics. I just loved it and loved competing. And
so, were you beating scholarship
yes,
runners?
I was. And they couldn't understand why. But then, in retrospect, looking back at it, I was able to figure out pretty much why. Is because, again, they were looking at everything that I did all of the results, and the internet hadn't been invented yet. And so the all of my results were on paper, and they all said 3 miles. Well, when you run, 15:45 for 3 miles, that's not nearly as impressive as it is when you run 15:45 for 5K. Now you're running just over 5-minute pace, where in you're running 15:15 otherwise. Well, 15:15 was going to make the team, but running just over 5:05 a mile, that was good enough to make the team as a freshman. And we were running almost exclusively 10Ks in cross country at D1 school, and but that's why I was able to make that team, is that I really wasn't as bad. I was at a different level than they looked at on paper. Plus, and the longer I ran, the better I got.
And I suppose back then they didn't have chip timing and
all this
other stuff.
Oh, heavens no.
It's an old stopwatch.
A stopwatch. Just before I was getting, quite frankly, if you ask Steve, I would imagine if he ran some races in earlier than, or in like around 1972 to 74, I will tell you that the way that they used to do is runners just said, hey, let's go run a 6-mile race at such and such. In the Atlanta area, Stone Mountain is a well-known park. And there basically is a 5-mile loop around the base of the park. And people would meet there at the designated time. Might be most likely it was 9 o'clock. And one person had a stopwatch. And everybody would say, okay, behind the line, all right, runner set, go. And they would put the watch down at the finish line. First person across, crosses, stops, picks up the stopwatch, picks it up, says, okay, I guess that took me about 5 seconds to do that. Okay. And then they would read out the time for the next maybe 10 or 15 people that come across the line, and then somebody else that has already finished comes in, relieves them, and then they read out the time, and they all pat each other on the back and go home. And that was about the size of it. But
where was the awards at?
There weren't. Nor were there T-shirts.
Oh, Lord.
Now, the Peachtree Road Race is, quite frankly, the dog that changed all of that, where T-shirts were involved and other things. Now, the Atlanta Track Club existed. It just didn't exist at a huge, like the multi-million-dollar organization that it is now. It's grown. It's grown because of the Peachtree Road Race. They also hosted a variety of races throughout the year, but the Peachtree Road Race certainly has taken them to a whole different level of success and authority.
Everybody wasn't out running back in those days. Now, everybody runs, which is good. But, back in the day, you didn't have nearly the boom that you have now.
No, it was still roughly 12% of the population. And we've gone through, I think it is now 3 running booms, what would be classified as 3 different running booms. And in each instance, they were about 12% of the population. Now,
but in each instance, have we gotten slower?
Well, in each instance, what has happened is there is a larger array of abilities running. Okay? Yes, in the 70s, the average time for the marathon to finish, the average time, and you know how averages are done, and you know that the winning time wasn't 2 hours and 15 minutes every time, and that's always going to be a fewer number of people up front in the masses. But the average time was 3:30. Now the average time for the marathon is over 5 hours. It's a different. What has happened is through the development, without question, in my opinion, it's the development of the shoes that allows so many more people to enjoy the sport who wouldn't necessarily run in the sport if their legs hurt all the time. So with the invent of the pronation controlling shoes, so that the people who severely pronate, who basically run on the inside of their heels rather than the outside of their heels, their knees are helped because of the shoes, so it helps get them out. or straighten them out. And by doing so, their bodies don't revolt. They don't get hurt so much. Now, Nike has been involved with some of that, and Nike also created a shoe that was the bane of a lot of runners, but it was the first air shoe. It's called a Tailwind. Mm-hmm. And they didn't stabilize the air. And unfortunately, what that caused, a large portion of people went to orthopedics because they had Achilles tendonitis. Until Nike figured out how to stabilize those shoes, air didn't catch on really that fast. But then once they learned how to stabilize it,
but they look cool.
Oh, the Tailwind. It was a light blue, silverish shoe, and it was so soft. Yeah. Oh my gosh! But the original Pegasus was not even an air shoe. The original Pegasus. But it was a great, a lot of shoe companies did a lot of great things, and the shoe companies like Adidas, Nike, Brooks, Saucony, heck, there was Converse had a run in there. Then
New Balance.
New Balance certainly was in there in that mix. They did a great deal of work toward creating it to where people could enjoy the sport more and more, no matter what your abilities were. Mm-hmm. So with that, with the people who ran, they could run without breaking down, without having to have the special great shoes that are now available. So you still had a lot of people running. They just were they were physiologically able to, without having to have corrective shoes or different categories of shoes, and they didn't have to go to doctors all the time to have things worked on. So you had a higher percentage of people that could run faster, and they did. Now it is more of a mass sport, and all different abilities are available to do it, and people can qualify. And as long as there are races that people can qualify in, they're gonna work their tails off to get to the qualify for that ability to run. In New York, Boston are certainly ones that you know of. There are other ones that you have to run faster times to get into.
So now we have dry fit and goos.
Oh, the technology. My wife Alice's father was he lived in Chicago at the time, and at the time white cotton running shorts were what people ran in. And if I had to think back of it, that's probably what I started off with. But he was in his, I think he was in his 40s when this happened, and some neighbor called the police and said there was some man running around their neighborhood in underwear, and he was actually picked up. He got released, but he was actually picked up.
His boxers on,
and they thought he should have had more clothing on. But the changes that have been made with clothing, where you don't just have gray sweatsuits on, and making do with whatever you can do. Yeah, it's phenomenal, the changes with Gore-Tex and all the other things that you can now wear that's not as difficult as it used to be. Look at some of the clips from the 1 mile Roger Bannister's.
Is that the one where he's wearing the hat?
Well, I would not be surprised if that day he was wearing a toboggan prior to the race. Prior to it. But, I mean, look at the differences in the shoes that they were wearing. One of the very dynamic presentations I saw is that Jesse Owens. Well, if you just look at his time versus the time of individuals now, you're going, holy smokes, not even close. But apparently you can do calculations based on, of course, he was digging out his own starting position in a cinder track. He wasn't running on a synthetic track. He was running with shoes with basically nails going in the opposite, push through the sole of the shoe, rather than having specialized shoe that help give you the most bounce and the most reflexes and all that fun stuff. And if you then take and do the calculations, Jesse Owens is within certainly within 0.2 of a second of the world's fastest runners now.
Oh yeah, and that's without, because Jesse Owens probably had a day job. He was, back in the day when they didn't get paid nearly and had sponsors and everything else.
That didn't occur. Oh my gosh, think through this. Being able to be a professional runner did not occur until the late 80s.
Yeah. So, I don't know what other jobs he's working, but he's probably, training on his off time.
Right.
Yeah. And knows.
But regardless, just the technology advancements that have been made are phenomenal. Make the sport better for us. Can you imagine how the pole vault has changed and how the high jump has changed and all of the running events? It's amazing. The people that I've had the pleasure of watching who dominate the sport, who have made such advancements, like in the 400-meter intermediate hurdles for men, Edwin Moses from Morehouse College. When he came on the scene in 1976 at the Montreal Olympics, jaws just dropped, because he was the first man to figure out how to run the entire distance without switching legs. Because he would lead with what typically happened is men would lead with let's just say for the right leg for the first through the first almost 250 meters, and then they would be getting so fatigued by that point that they had to switch and lead with their other leg for the remaining portion of the race of the 400 meters. Edwin Moses did 13 steps, all 10 hurdles. That was unheard of. But he also didn't lose. The man didn't lose. He didn't lose a final until he finally retired sometime in the sometime in the early 90s. He had only lost he had not lost a single final. He was the only man to hold the world record, and he kept breaking his own. And I think he only lost one heat in that span of time from 1976 to the 90s.
That's incredible.
It was incredible to watch him.
That's fast, and it's extended.
Oh, yeah. He was amazing. But we've had the pleasure of seeing people like Steve Prefontaine, like Alberto Salazar, that changed the sport. Then we've had recently Ryan Hall, who have changed the sport for the top runners. One thing that I do want to make sure that you do understand, where the in the 70s, were people fast? Yes. The masses were faster. Okay. But we're still running world records. We're still running American records. In fact, American records which didn't get broken for over 25 years, like the men's 1500. Steve Scott said it, and Alan, I can't believe that, but the kid that broke it after 25 years. But it was broken. So world records, American records continue to get broken. They were fast, but they're continuing to get, faster. So the faster keep getting faster, but the in having more people involved in the sport, then you're going to have more abilities. And that's as long as people are enjoying it and or staying active. I'm happy for them.
Right.
I want them to be active so that they're able to enjoy life to their fullest. I'm not going to say you're going to live one day longer than you're really, than you're supposed to. But those years that you have will probably be more beneficial, more active. And I would rather go out under my terms than under laying in a hospital bed or something along those lines.
You know what's cool is there's so many people now, and I guess I won't say so many because it's like 1% of the population has actually ran a marathon. Does that sound about right? Is it 1% or is it a little bit more than that?
I believe it's more than that.
A little bit more than
now, because it has become such a mass. Yeah, the highest number. Okay, the largest participatory events are 5Ks and marathons. And half marathons are, so 5Ks and marathons are the most, and they're so close it's hard to differentiate which one's more popular. Mm-hmm. The half marathon is just a few ticks below, but you can actually see the graph go down. And then all the other distances plummet. All of them. They're just not available, or people don't want to do them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, now, if people wanted to do them, I would suspect that there would be more of them.
You would think.
I know you've seen, all the years you've been running, that bar is there, in the marathon is kind of what everybody wants to do a marathon. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. If you're an avid runner, you want to eventually do that. I know that it's kind of neat to see these people who come out, as long as you're healthy and you've got the desire and the will to do it, to train, you can do it. I mean, that's kind of a cool thing these days, because I'd mentioned this last week, but that was like unheard of. When I was a kid, my dad, we used to watch the Olympics and watch people run marathons, and we never thought that one day anybody could ever do that as far as just, a weekend warrior.
Well, now the availability is, without question, the availability is there. And the availability is there because the interest is there. And people want to, when people have run a marathon, they can say they are one of the few in the world who have done something like that and pushed themselves beyond, because as I indicate oftentimes when I'm coaching people, is that you learn a great deal about yourself while training for a marathon.
That's actually the fun to me. I mean,
and so let's just say that you do that for 16 weeks where you are concerted effort toward a marathon. You learn volumes about yourself in those 16 weeks.
Definitely.
And then in that one day, you learn as much, if not more, about yourself in that one day, one event, however long it takes you to get that from the starting line to the finish line, because there is, and many people don't understand this, but it doesn't really matter what level of runner you are. At some point in that in that event, you question whether or not you're going to finish.
Yeah. Every time.
If you're going for a faster time, if you're there to push yourself, there is, on all the marathons that I've run, there was not a single one, either my personal best or my personal worst, and the ones I didn't finish. But I didn't know. There was always a point at some point in that race where I questioned whether or not I was actually going to make it to the finish line. I did not know. And I think the marathon is more than just an event. It's a chess match. You have to manage so much about yourself in that event. It is a huge, huge undertaking. And when you do it, it is very empowering. And for people that, that it can be a life-changing success.
I agree. I mean, you feel bulletproof. When you're ready to go, when you're there and you're doing it, I mean, you just feel like $1 million, especially when you're out there training and you're running 16 miles and 18 miles. You're out there on the road, like you say, doing it. And definitely when you're in the race, there's times I've been out there and I say, yeah, I'm at 18 miles. Why am I doing this? I mean, I paid them to do this.
Well, not everybody should. Just not, not everybody should do everything. Not everybody can play professional football. Mm-hmm. Not everybody should play professional basketball. And not everybody should run a marathon. But I believe the ability to test oneself is available in running. And one of the other cool things about running, how many people can say that they ran with an Olympic champion? I was in the same race with Frank Shorter.
Oh, yeah.
I was in the same race with Boston Billy. I was in the same race. It doesn't matter whether or not you were competing against him. He was in the same race as you were.
That's why I love to run the river run. I'm not going to call it the gate. I'm going to call it the river run because I don't want to be yelled at on there. But it's because there's some great runners that show up. and world-class runners show up down there.
Oh, it's great. What that organization has created, what First Place Sports and has created down in Jacksonville, and the national championships that they now host annually. The American record has before it became a national championship. There were 2 races back to back. One was in February, and one was in March. The February one was in Tampa Bay. And it dealt with there was a 15K involved with that, and all the world-class runners would come to Tampa Bay to run in the 15K there. Gasparilla Distance Classic. There was only one race. Now there's a dozen.
It's a
races.
Weekend.
But the Gasparilla and the world's best time would be set in February, and then all those runners that went to Gasparilla in Tampa Bay at Tampa would stay around, and the race director sort of felt, okay, you take these guys for these, you house them for 10 days, you house them for 10 days, and then they run in your race up in Jacksonville. And every time it was set fast in Tampa, it was beaten, and they ran even faster at Jacksonville. And the world's America's fastest time for the men was set by Todd Williams, and no one's ever come close to it. He just destroyed, and he did it multiple times. Mm-hmm. And he a phenomenal 15K runner. He just wasn't the best 10K runner, and he wasn't the best half marathoner, nor was he the best marathoner. But the 15K, that man was on.
That was his
distance.
That
was his distance. And it's great when you can find your distance. If you might find out that 4.5 miles is your best distance. Mm-hmm. Too bad there's no races for 4.5 miles.
What's your best distance?
I competed better anything over 15K. 15K, I was okay, mm-hmm. But if the next available distance is 10 miles, generally speaking, but 10 miles and above, other than the marathon, I competed very well, and I found those to be very good distances. I was apparently very good at 35K and 30K. I'm sorry. At 30K, that's 18.6 miles. I apparently that was closer to where my body worked the best. I could hold on to it the most. But if you add the few more kilometers, the 7 more kilometers, I didn't do so well. I didn't do as well. I mean, I certainly ran well and did well, but I never met the goals that I set for myself.
What's your best marathon time?
My best marathon was set in, I don't remember the year, 1990, I think. It was in Huntsville at
Huntsville, Alabama.
Rocket City Marathon, and it was the older course, not the new course, but the older course, and I ran 2:21:03.
Pretty impressive.
What did you do? Did you stop, tie your shoe or something?
You mean for the? It was. There was a large contingent of males and females in that race. 2 women qualified, and I believe 5 men qualified for the Olympic trials. I was the first one not to.
So you run a 2:21 and 5 people beat you?
Yes.
Goodness gracious.
And Alice ran, my wife Alice ran it was under 2:45. I want to say it was 2:44. She's probably screaming at me right now. 2:44:30-ish. And the thing was, about around 22 miles, the winner, the person who eventually won the race for the women, had probably a minute or more lead, maybe even closer to 90 seconds lead. She beat Alice by less than 15 seconds. And it wasn't because the winner slowed down. The shark was in the water. The shark was there.
I was about to say, Alice is the shark.
The shark went after her.
Speaking of that, did running bring you and Alice together?
It did. We had met at Huntsville, Alabama, at the since you made such Rocket City,
Alabama.
We met at, I believe it was the Cotton Row 10K, which was held around on Memorial Day annually, and I think we met there, and then we had a mutual coach. Roy Benson was our coach at the time, and he was training her to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. He was training me to try to qualify for the Olympic trials. And we met often. Roy had track workouts for all of his athletes at a track in the Atlanta area, Dunwoody area. And Alice and I would see each other weekly, a couple times weekly.
He thought she was pretty cute.
Yeah, sure. It was great. And
this girl's cool and she likes to run, and
exactly.
She won't fuss at me if I have to go 10-mile training run.
Well, no, she never fussed about that part.
Can you imagine
living with me? I mean, oh my gosh. So yes, running brought us together, and even during the period of time when I didn't run, and I went from because I retired in 92. March of 92, I retired from running in the middle of a race, a marathon. I said, that's it. I'm done. And I didn't pick it back up until 2004.
That's when you came here?
I was already here, but that's when I started to, it was Alice's idea to start the running store. And once I started thinking about that and working on it and all, she said, you ought to open a running store. Okay. And I said, and at the time I ballooned up to, so I was in March of 92, I weighed, at that race, I weighed 127. By 2004, I had blossomed to 206 pounds. And I wasn't any taller. I was only short.
I resemble that remark.
Yes, but you're taller than I am by a lot. And I was this little short. And it's like nobody is going to. Who's going to listen to a little short fat guy? So I said I got to get back into running. And it was my head remembered what it was like. Body said we ain't ready to do that. So it revolted. My body revolted a great deal. With my trying to get back into running.
What do you weigh right now?
Right now, I am right around the 150 to 155 mark.
You feel pretty good there?
I would like it to go a little lower than that and all, but it is certainly, I will never get back down and be healthy. I will never be the weight I was when I competed at my best.
Yeah, you told me a couple of years ago, we were talking, and you said that you started some weight training.
Yes.
And I think you told me that, if you'd known that earlier.
Oh.
You'd been doing it for all these years.
Well, when I was being brought up, okay, I mean, we mentioned him before, Steve Prefontaine. He was notorious to have done 500 sit-ups a day. Now, he's also, he did 500 sit-ups a day, and that kind of got known. So a lot of distance runners did 500 push-ups or sit-ups a day. Well, you got to balance that out. But the only weightlifting in colleges and high school, the only weightlifting that they knew what to do was for one sport. Football. So here I am, I go to NC State, and they don't have a strength and conditioning person who specializes in what runners need. Instead, we're doing work for linebackers and linemen and things like that. And so we didn't do that very much because we got hurt. And that doesn't help if you're getting hurt. So instead, I didn't do any weightlifting. Then catapult, a lot of years, and I am honored to be involved and hired to coach Valdosta State University's cross-country men and women's teams. And after I was hired, my next conversation, I think, was with the kids. But then my next meeting was with the strength and conditioning coach at Valdosta State University, and I knew because I was, a running nerd. It wasn't that I was doing it myself, but I knew how important it was for strength and conditioning and how the world's best runners were doing strength and conditioning. And he was very receptive and he had been looking forward to working with the kids for a number of years. And it has maintained ever since. Without I had nagging issues. I've only had one running injury per se in my career, but I had little nagging things, and nothing that would really, take me out for weeks on end. But it would be literally a pain in the backside, okay? Because that's where runners are typically pretty weak.
Yeah.
Well, we started doing squats, and I was like, I distinctly, he said, well, first thing we got to do is we have to have squats. And I said, oh, no, we're not doing squats. And he slammed his hands on the desk. You're going to be doing squats. And I slammed my hand on his desk and said, we're not doing squats. Because the only way I had ever seen squats, we got hurt our knees. He said, you just don't know how to do it. And he got very angry with me, very forceful. And it was great because he then took me outside to to where we had some room, and he did a squat for me, and he showed me how to do the squat, and I could feel how it engaged different muscle groups that had always been a pain in my backside. Wow, this is great. And it has been incorporated with the program ever since. So since I was been involved with the program, the kids have done strength and conditioning twice a week, every week, including weeks that we don't, they're expected to continue this material. And that way they are able to improve their core strength. And by doing so, they are able to become more efficient for a longer period of time. And when you're asking a kid, or anybody, quite frankly, if you're asking anyone to put it all on the line, to give it everything they've got, at some point, their stride, their form is going to deteriorate. Mm-hmm. You just hope it's in the last 600 meters, not the first 600 meters. Okay?
Right.
And so with the stronger you are holistically, the arms, your shoulders, your back, and I don't know all the muscle groups, but I just know that if you are well evenly and muscle strength is, and there's not imbalances, then you're able to do more things for a longer period of time. And incorporating strength and conditioning was absolutely mandatory for me. And I do firmly believe that with the advancements that I made when I started running again after 2004, because I was doing strength and conditioning then, if I had known what I knew in the 2000s, if I had known that in the 70s and the 80s, yes, I do believe very strongly that I would have been a better runner. And the schools that were particularly better, their coaches, their coaching staff knew it.
It's a well-kept secret.
Yeah, they didn't pass that stuff along. Right.
So you mentioned that you're currently VSU's cross-country coach.
You haven't heard something, have you?
Yeah, I've heard everything.
Currently.
Currently. Well, because...
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes, I am fortunate enough to be that.
When did you start coaching?
Actually, in high school.
In high school, you started coaching.
I was a student of the sport. Mm-hmm. All right. I was intrigued by the sport in 1972 after I watched the Olympics. Actually saw the steeplechase. Couldn't tell you who was in it, but I loved watching that. Wow, that's the race I want to be in. Of course, the barriers are about forget. And I wanted to. So, but I started to Runner's World, Track and Field News, Runner. I just to devour that information and read it. And I had the distinct, without question, I was in the right place at the right time, because in the Atlanta area at that time, you had the likes of Bob Varsha. You had the likes of Don Cardone. You had the likes of Jeff Galloway. You had the likes of Frank Shorter visiting quite regularly. You had the likes of people, Gail Barron. You had the likes of people who knew stuff about this sport and how well they were doing. And then you throw in there a few years later Craig Virgin, and you're just going like, wow, all these great runners are here and we can learn from them. So I was probably real nerdy, and I asked them questions, and I was always interested in how they went about doing things. And I also had the distinct honor and pleasure of meeting and knowing a man by the name of Dr. Dave Martin, who worked at Georgia State University, but was also worked for the governing body and was the head of the distance crew for the American team. And all the all of America's best distance runners would come to Atlanta to talk with him, and he, as an exercise physiologist, would figure out their training programs. And he was kind enough to talk to me often. He's a great man, wonderful man. And I learned so much from all these different individuals. But in high school, I also had a gentleman who ran he moved from Boston to the Atlanta area in the probably 77 or something like that. And there was this team that you might have heard of before from the Boston area called the Greater Boston Track Club.
Oh, yeah.
Well, he was one of the horses. They called him horses. He was one of the horses of the Greater Boston Track Club, and one of the premier coaches was coaching that group. He learned a great deal from that gentleman. That gentleman then came and moved to Atlanta, got involved with some kids, got some kids involved throughout the Atlanta area, and I got to learn from him. And because I was one of the kids that he picked. And I learned from him. And then from that, I get to meet Alberto Salazar. And from him, I get to meet and Greg Meyer and Robbie Hodge and Bill Rogers and all these other people, because they would come to Atlanta. And as soon as they came to Atlanta, they'd go see Kirk. And we all would run together. It was great. And so I loved it. But Kirk taught me a great deal about what distance runners were doing and how to set up workouts and recovery and things along those lines. And my high school coach, he was a great motivator, right? Didn't know a lot about running, but he was a great motivator. And if he told me that I would run the mile better tomorrow if I ran 26 miles today, I will tell you for a fact, if I had run the 26 miles today, I would run a faster mile the next day, because I believed in him so much. Kirk would have said, that's stupid. But my coach, that's how much of a motivator he was for me. He was able to, he could push my buttons, and not in a bad way. He knew how to get me to do what I needed to do when I needed to do it.
That's a big part of it, though, right?
Oh, it is huge. But I had the distinct, he let me coach myself most of my high school career, and I was using Kirk, which meant I was using Greater Boston Track Club, and I was using different influences, but I had a major plan of how I was going to go about doing it. And he said, and you're going to need to bring him along with you, because we discussed, the coach and I, my high school coach and I discussed, how's the best way we can get this kid to go to state? And we both agreed that there was no way the event he loved, he was never going to qualify for state in. Never. It was just too stacked. In our region, it was just too stacked. So, but I knew he could make it in the 2 mile. And so I coached him without telling him ever that he was going to be running the 2 mile. And then it was the few days before region, he said, so he started asking questions like, well, so I'm running the 800 and I'm running, or the 880, and I'm running and I think I was the one that said the 2 mile. The what? The 2 mile.
The what?
The what? I'm not trained for the 2 mile. I said, excuse me. Who have you run nearly every step of this training program with? You're dirty. You knew all the time. Yeah. And then he qualified for state. His senior year, he qualified for state in the 2 mile and was running. It was I was running first. He was running second until 200 meters to go, and then like 3 or 4 people passing. But he made the podium his first year at state in his senior year, and it was great. And that's where my coaching started. Now, I had the pleasure of working with other people, and I certainly was coached. In college, I listened to my coach. I had a coach. He told me what to do. I did what he told me to do. When I got out of college, I felt I coached myself for a couple of years, and it really wasn't very successful, as successful as I would like. Then I moved back to Atlanta, and I said, I need somebody. And Roy Benson and I got together, and I worked with him for a couple of years. And without question, he has had a huge impact on how I go about training and training other people. But he and I did have a philosophical difference. And he and I discussed it multiple times. And he wasn't going to budge. I wasn't going to budge. And we agreed that it was time for me to move on.
Sometimes you just maybe grow out of a coach.
Well,
and it's not that you're necessarily don't like each other.
Oh, no.
It's just time to move on.
Oh, we to this.
You've taught me everything that
I can do to this point.
Mm-hmm.
And the funny thing, okay, so when I ran in every distance that I ran, which was the mile and above in college, I PR'd. After that, I trained myself. I only PR'd in a couple of items. Then I went with Roy, and I PR'd in every event other than the mile. So from the 2 mile on, I PR'd again. All of my PRs changed. Then I left Roy, even though he had a huge he and I train a lot like he does. There's just some things that I do a little bit differently, and I PR'd again in everything from the 2 mile on. Mm-hmm. So in each one of these stages, I was running better than I'd ever run before, but I kept raising the bar, and I wasn't satisfied with just where that was. I had to keep moving, and then I had the distinct pleasure of working with my wife, and she PR'd in the marathon and in almost every distance. And then I would coach people when I wasn't running. I coached people periodically, but in 2008, February of 2008, I was approached by Valdosta State and asked if I was interested. At the time, I had Get Active Running and More. It was 3 years old, and would you like to do this? And it was like, oh, not only yes, but heck yes. And I did have 2 years where I did not coach with VSU, and I regretted that decision within 2 weeks of making it. Mm-hmm. After I had said I'm no longer going to do it, I knew I had made a mistake. But then I had the distinct honor and privilege to work with the YMCA, so I got to coach again. I got all these people. I had so many people that I got to work with and watch them.
That's where you met me.
That's where I ran into you.
or that's when you began to kind of coach me, I would say.
And but strength and conditioning or in working the core is very important for everyone. Mm-hmm. No matter where you are, you need to work on that.
And there's still a video out on YouTube of those core exercises.
Oh yeah,
if they want to look them up.
Oh yeah.
And so, do you still coach individuals?
Yes, I still coach individuals.
Okay.
Let me ask you this, Todd.
Go ahead.
Can I interrupt you there, Rob?
No.
At our ages, Rob's 40, I'm 56. We both want to, which I know Rob's got some life in him. Rob's got some life in him.
I hope so. Let me check my pulse real quick.
I want a marathon again. I mean, is that, surely it's possible.
Oh, sure.
But is that, how long can I continue can I get better? I mean, at my age, can I get better, or is that just unlikely?
Well, when that has, it's training smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
That's train smarter, not harder.
We're talking to the wrong guys.
So if you, depending on who, how you went about training or racing or running that race, your PR in the marathon are there things that could be done with your training that would help you get to a higher level or a faster level? I would imagine so.
You probably remember that it was always harder for me, not smarter. Do you remember that?
Well, Todd, you know the motto of our show.
What is that?
It is undertrained and overconfident.
Does that fit us?
Well, you would. You always want to be just a touch undertrained, because if you are overtrained, the objective is to get you to the finish line without breaking. It is very easy. I share this with every young lady and man that comes to our school that is interested in coming. I said, breaking you is easy. I could break you to where you'll never run again in less than 3 weeks. That's the easy part. The hard part is training you to get you to the finish line, the last event of your season, while you're still standing. And you're always on that. You're always on that knife's edge.
I would imagine one of the hard parts of coaching college athletes is to convince them that they don't have to go blazing every day.
Actually, most people. People.
I feel good, Coach. I can run.
Yes, the key to me, in most of the people, if there's a common thread with everyone that I've ever coached, I have to slow them down to speed them up. Mm-hmm. They run too hard, too fast, too often, and so they are constantly fatigued, and they never will allow themselves the opportunity to run fast because they are always so fatigued. And that was one of the big things that I had to change in my life, was that every run, there was a potential for every run to be nearly a race. Yeah. I would run. So either I had time constraints, or I felt good, or something was ticking me off. Running is, and without question, running helped me in school a great deal. The focus that I had to have, because so much time of my day was taken away by this sport, I had to be very focused on, getting my studies done. I had to stay focused with that, and it also calmed me down. Mm-hmm. And I could also get a lot of anger out. If a teacher busted my chops during the school day, I'd run that teacher into the ground during that run. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily always the wisest thing, but at least I was able to, and it certainly helped me a great deal. I as I've said earlier, I have no idea where I'd be today if I didn't have running.
Into your running.
So are you still taking on runners?
Sure.
So what's the best way for them to contact you if they want to? Which I tell a lot of people, probably look them up on Facebook.
Facebook is the easiest way, probably the easiest way to find me. Look for Todd Smoot, and every Monday I send out a little something about it. And quite frankly, the best, I prefer email, because I can save it and I can give a lot more information that way. Mm-hmm. So it gives you email address that you can contact me, and then I will send you some information. Much like the question you just asked, many people want, well, can you make me faster? Well, I don't know yet. I don't know what you've done. And so I have to get a pretty good idea of what you've done in the past, but particularly in the last 4 weeks, because it's not cookie cutter type training programs, which you'll get from apps. This is taking where you are and trying to move you toward where you want to be. Sorry about that. Where you want to be. Not, well, okay, so you're this old, you're a male, then you're this, and go run this at this pace. I got to find out where you are first, and then move you toward a direction and help you along the way that way. But Facebook is probably the easiest way, or if you don't like Facebook and just the email address is fairly simple. It's Coach Smoot at earthlink.net.
Coach Smoot at earthlink.net.
And then you'll reach me, and I will.
Or they can instant message Running Theory, and we can pass
them along and have some fun with that.
But so what? Say somebody's out there and they're interested in beginning to run. What is one piece of advice that you might give them?
Slow down.
Slow down?
Yes. So many people think that the only way that they can run is if they're pushing it hard. Quite frankly, if you are a someone who has not even been active, do not start running. All right? Start walking. Walk first. Get a good pair of shoes, not what your best bud's got on, or what you've got on. It's running shoes are as technical as eyeglasses are now. And if I have so if you need the analogy, if you are a nearsighted need nearsighted glasses, and you get glasses because they look good, but they're for farsighted people, why'd you buy them?
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with shoes. And so there are running shoe stores in the that you can go to. They will hopefully analyze you. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a computer or this, that, and the other. You can do it by sight. I can do it by looking at shoes. But they can give you an idea as to what category of shoe, not a brand. There's not one brand that everybody can wear. Not every brand has good shoes. But you find out what category is the right category. You have the right length, you have the right width, and then you try on no less than 3 shoes. When you try on no less than 3 shoes, the one that feels like you most don't have a shoe on, that's probably the right shoe for you. But you've got to have proper equipment. You wouldn't send a football player, well, some people might have been sent out on the football field without a helmet on, but you don't send a football player out.
What are you saying, Todd?
You don't send football players out on a football field without a helmet on. Even on their easy days, they've got their helmets on, okay, and their shoulder pads. You don't send a runner out in tree-torn tennis shoes. Okay? And so get shoes, start walking first, and don't expect to be your fastest. It's the quote, Bill Dillinger's quote, all things take time, especially distance running. That I might have messed that up a little bit, but it's pretty close to that idea. All things take time to develop. You're not going to be, when I went from 206 pounds down to 150, that wasn't something that was going to happen in 4 weeks. It took me 12 years to gain it. It's going to not take 12 years to lose it, but it's going to take some time to lose it. So do it methodically, incremental changes. But so get shoes, start walking first, then jog a little bit. Walk, jog, jog more, walk less, jog more, walk less. Never stop jogging. Then you're ready to start doing some more things.
Which I remember many years ago. Actually, it hasn't been that many years ago, but when my goal was just to run a 5K without stopping. And it, first of all, it was to run a 5K, finish a 5K. Then it was to run a 5K without stopping. And then we started working on the times.
Right.
9-minute miles.
Yes.
8-minute miles.
Eventually
got down 6:30 miles. And I hope to be there again.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You have to put yourself in the position to get your goals. You have to put yourself in that position. If you do not, if you unknowingly or knowingly sabotage yourself, you will not reach those goals. But you've got to go for it. Putting those together walking first, getting good shoes, and you will have a greater success. And I've had the distinct pleasure of working with people who say, I always get hurt when I run. Well, but they sabotage themselves because they try to do too much, too fast, too quick, too early. And so where a coach comes in, quite frankly, often the times is coaches are holding back and pulling back the reins and say, slow down, relax, not so far. You don't need to run so much. Just get this in. But I want to do more. Just get this in. Then your body can actually absorb the training rather than being torn down so badly that you become injured. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
The old wives' tale is, it ruins your knees. It ruins your ankles.
No.
And we all know that's not true. I mean, I think it's good for you, actually. I mean, even in longevity, I think. I mean,
well, what ruins knees is weight.
Yeah, ruins hearts also.
Yes, if you remain active, I mean, again, I'll never be where I was weight wise when I was at my best, but I don't need to. My body has changed, and but I can certainly optimize what I've got, and if my resting pulse rate is pretty low, under 60. The American Red Cross goes, oh my gosh, his pulse rate is under 60. Are you feeling okay today? It's up. It's 58. Wow, that's that bad. Wow, and they have to get a permission to give blood if they have above a 60. It's like that's horrible. That you're worried about a 60, but when the average pulse rate for Americans is over 70, they're not used to seeing something like that, and that's they're expecting to see higher. If you can have a resting pulse rate, it helps so many areas. I've had the pleasure of writing many articles in the Valdosta Daily Times, and people want a pill. How can I take a pill to solve this problem? How can I take a pill to solve this, or do this, do this, do this, do this? Where most of the time, if you're not, listen to it, the side effects of taking this pill is there's not too many side effects for being active, except health.
You sweat and smelling bad until you take a shower.
Hey, it's good fun though. It's just great.
As I said before, Fred Astaire was no big guy. He was, but he danced. Dancing is a great aerobic activity. Go dance.
Yeah.
Go do ballroom dancing. Go do salsa dancing. Go do dance. But cycle, swim, walk, any one of the machines. But be true to it and be true to yourself and go do it. Don't sit around saying, I just wish I could go do something. No. I mean, what's great about running, you don't have to have a membership.
Yeah.
You do need good shoes. Bad shoes, bad time.
Good shoes and consistency.
But we've been 1:15.
I'm barely warmed up.
I know. We're going to have you in because we didn't get to half the things that I really wanted to talk about.
That's true.
I talked too much.
Because I want to have you back so we can talk VSU cross country and different things like that. But you do have a opportunity for people to come out. Hopefully, if everything goes to plan, we have a series coming out at Freedom Park.
Yes.
And this year it won't be on the track. It'll be
it's all-comer cross-country meets, which would be the plan is right now June 16th. It's a Tuesday. We will the command to start will be at 6:30, so come out earlier. It's $2 for anybody that's 20 and above, and $1 for anybody 19 and under. All right, and you'll have the opportunity to run one loop, which is approximately 1.6 miles, 5K or 4.5 miles, and no pressure, no fanfare, no awards. It's an all-comer meet, but the clock will be there. And you run through the finish chute. You see your time. You get to do this, that, and the other. You'll have other people pushing you. The course will be marked, and all you have to do is decide which distance you want to do. But hopefully, we will have that starting on June 16th at Freedom Park with a starting time of 6:30. The gun or the command to start will be at 6:30. I'll probably be there probably around 5:40, 5:45 to start getting people lined up or signed in. It'll be a simple item. We'll keep doing our social distancing. We have a wide starting line. We can get people going. Command to go. You guys go have some fun and come back. And when you're done, you're done.
Awesome. So that is going to be on Tuesday night starting on June 16th.
I believe so.
June 16th. And for $2, it's hard to find a race for $2.
Yeah, that's pretty cheap fun.
We're going back to the Atlanta Truck Club days when I used to run them.
But other than that, is there any 5Ks out there that you think would be when we can start rolling again?
The difficulty you were talking about with the Independence Day event was that parade permits were shut down, and the parade permit was not issued before the parade permit being issued were shut down, stopped. But there are some events that have already got their parade permits, and those are some races that are customarily known to be done in July. So I would anticipate some actual running events will happen in July. The Barnes 5K, most likely. I've not heard of anything else other than that. And also the Break Bread 5K, which is done in Oldwood Valley. Then
it's flat and fast.
Oh,
flat and fast.
Yes, irony, or gullible. And then we being the cross country team for Valdosta State, we will be hosting our event in August, assuming that there is no delays or any imposed.
August, we can probably have you back in before August to talk about that. And I would like to talk about the team and, more aspects of that. But, because I know there's a lot of VSU Blazers out here. I'm wearing my Blazers shirt today because I love the cross-country team. And y'all usually have an event in September.
August.
But for actual races.
A race, okay, a collegiate race.
If you haven't been to a collegiate race, it is amazing. It is just like going to a great basketball game or football game, because when you sit there at the finish line and you see these kids just going after it, I mean, there is no lack of competing in their hearts. They are laying it down. And it's just, it gives me chill bumps to see these kids come across.
Me too.
So
this last March, we only got to have one track meet. And the kids, they ran the 1,500, the 800, and then the women ran the 5,000, and the men ran the 5,000. The men's 5,000 was the last event that we were running. And they didn't know where I was for a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I was on the other side of the fence crying because of how well they had done and how well. They had put so much into it. They had done so much work. I was just so proud of them, and I will continue to be. These kids are really doing it. They're putting it out there, and couldn't ask for any better group of kids. And the kids that come to VSU really are, and they're great. The camaraderie that they have, the band of brothers, the sisterhood, all that. They're godparents to each other's children. They're in each other's weddings. They truly enjoy each other, and we have a great group of kids.
And I want you to come in and talk about that.
I will.
Rick, you have anything else to say?
I think that's it. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah,
an
hour 15 goes by like this.
We're not talking.
Oh, you're not kidding. Well, hey, it was very interesting. Yeah, I was glad to have you. But we saw you on the road yesterday. It's the first time I've seen you on the road.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I just kind of got back in Valdosta, but good to see you.
It's been a while since I've been on the roads.
Yeah, well, good to see you out there.
So hopefully we'll see you out on the roads. if you're out there. And like I said, message us if you want to get in touch with Todd Smoot, maybe interested in having him coach you to reach your potential. Then look him up on Facebook. As for Rick and myself, we will be out on the streets running Sunday mornings at Mackey Park. If anybody's ever interested and wants to get into it and, come over and talk to us, if you see us out there, just give us a shout.
Undertrained and
overconfident.
There we go.
We do not lack confidence. So on that, we will see you next Monday. We'll put something out next Monday.
Yeah, we're going to be pre-recorded next Monday, right? Did we say that already? I can't remember.
I don't remember if I said it, but we'll
have something.
We'll have something up.
Sounds good.
All right, take care.